Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Richard Sachs, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at the University of Rio Grande and Rio Grande Community College. And I brought the Provost's office with me today. Not the tables and chairs, but more important than that, the people. I have with me today Kenni Horton, who is the AM Administrative Assistant for both the President and the Provost. And I have with me Diane Clark, who is the PM Assistant for both the President and the Provost. We're located in 223 Bob Evans Farms Hall, and I'm going to let both Kenni, since she starts in the morning, we'll go through the day, tell us a little bit about herself, her background, and the various offices she's worked in, and I'll also provide an opportunity then for Kenni to talk about what she does in the afternoon when she's not at the Provost's office, and then also what Diane does in the morning. So Kenni, and that's Kenni with an I, and if you want to tell us your whole name, I don't think I ever knew it, but you can just go on and give some background as you wish.
That's all right. I'm Kenni. I started working here in 1991 in the accounting office. I spent 17 years there. I won't say I'm very happy to be out of there. I currently work in 2 different offices. I enjoy it.
Do you want to talk about the Dean's office in Wood Hall in the afternoon, just so people know where you are?
In the afternoons from 1 to 5, I'm upstairs in Wood Hall, room 223. I am the secretary to the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. I can register students, I can pull reports, I can do just about anything that needs to be done, or at least find the people who can do it, if I can't do it.
Great. And Diane, do you want to tell us about your morning before you come to the President and Provost's office every afternoon?
Yes. In the morning, I'm the secretary of the Math and Science, or School of Math and Science. I take care of daily tasks, take care of all my faculty and the students' registrations. Just about everything there is to do or required.
And Diane, one thing that I found very interesting is I'm used to having full-time academic advisors, and I'm used to having faculty members advise. But one thing I've been amazed at is you advise students. You advise math and science students.
Yes.
Is there a particular major, or is it any major in math and science?
That began when, in the summers when some of the professors are out. So I wanted to make sure that I was versed on getting our new students in the summer, freshmen.
And can you also tell us, since Kenni said she's been here since 1991, when did you first start working here?
1983.
Wow.
I've been here for a while.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And well, it just helps me so much that both of you have so much longitudinal institutional knowledge, because I'm just, in my 3rd year here, and even though I've done the job before at other institutions, it's just so helpful that you know exactly where to go with problems, you know how to enter in courses, you know the dynamics of the institution. That really helps us a lot. So let's go on and talk a little bit more about the Provost's office. My title is Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, which is kind of redundant because a Vice President for Academic Affairs just focuses on the curriculum and on faculty. The term Provost has been used for a while. It's actually been used for hundreds of years, but it's been used to describe academic vice presidents in North America who do things beyond just academics. And in fact, here, I also oversee intercollegiate athletics, the Madog Center for Welsh Studies, the library, campus computing and networking, which is everything in terms of campus computing that supports the academics. So both the mainframe and the individual laptop and desktop computers. We're mostly a PC campus, but we also deal with Macs as well as developmental education. We call it student success now. So those are various areas that report to me. So literally just calling me a provost would be sufficient, because it's an academic vice president who does other things as well. But the title I inherited from my predecessor was provost and VPAA, and I think Mike Thompson is going to put on a dictionary definition of provost. So you see it comes from the Middle English and the Old English and from medieval Latin. And I think even though people would say it's probably number 1 or 2 that really defines what it is that we do at this institution, as I shared this, if you look at number 4, the steward or bailiff of a medieval manor or an officer of a medieval administrative district, that's pretty close to what I do, and I especially like number 5, the mayor of a municipality in Scotland. I think that's a real tight fit. I'm glad that it's obsolete that we're a prison warden, because I want no part of that whatsoever. So again, much of what we do is, as faculty come through, both interviewing new faculty evaluations, faculty load reports, entering the schedules, which is a very interesting thing for us to do because we're a combined community college and a 4-year university, and we not only have a main campus, but we have 3 off-site centers. And I find myself using the metaphor, we have to play nice in the sandbox, because it's kind of like there's a toy and you have 4 different first graders who are fighting over it. Are we going to offer this gen ed class at one campus or at another, or anything else? So I did task Diane and Kenni, saying if you have any interesting stories or funny stories. I don't know if you have either of those that you want to share. If not, I can start regaling you with some things, but I know we try to be professional and leave things at work, but without mentioning individuals by name, are there any stories that you think our TV or YouTube audience would be interested in hearing?
Well, Diane and I are twins.
Okay.
People used to come up to the accounting office and ask me how Stevie was, and it took me a long time to realize that Stevie was her son, because she was just downstairs. So I had longer hair, but you had a blonde upstairs, you had a blonde downstairs, and one of them had a son named Stevie.
Okay. So is that fraternal twins or identical twins, or do we not?
Fraternal.
Fraternal. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She
So
was
pretty
born
close.
before me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from
close, yeah.
another mother.
So essentially, the takeaway point is you're sharing a lot of genes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Not blue
Not-
genes,
no,
but
not blue genes, no.
GENES.
Probably
Okay.
brain cells.
Okay, brain
Yeah.
cells too. Okay, good. Diane, anything you want to share, or you want
gosh.
to, or stories, or?
Just that I am behind the scenes person, not in front of the
Oh,
scenes.
okay. And I will say it took a little bit of cajoling to get them both on screen, but I think it's important because so much of the time people don't understand what some of the workings of the institution are, and frequently I think I have fielded, and they generally field, calls where somebody will call up and have just a complaint that really has nothing to do with our office, or something like, there's no toilet paper in the line center, which is where our athletics are. And well, that's a problem, but that's not anything that the provost's office is really supposed to do. And I think one thing I really like about Kenni and Diane is they don't lose their temper. They never get mad at people. I mean, people can be yelling at them or swearing at them. And again, we try to act like gentlemen and ladies in our office. And even if people get angry at us, we find that they do settle down quickly when we can still stay calm and say, I know you're angry that, somebody, cracked the window of your car in the parking lot. We'll file a police report. We'll send you to campus police. I can't apologize enough that happened, but it's really nothing we can repair or fix here. And I think those kinds of things happen a lot of the time, maybe in part because literally no one knows what a provost is. My youngest child is 10, and they've heard me being called a provost or vice president for years. And it wasn't last summer, I think it was 2 summers ago, we were reading together in the living room, and he's an avid reader, and apropos of nothing, he stuck his head up and he goes, "Dad, what's a provost?" And I thought that was very interesting, that who knows how, it would have been like an 8-year-old brain at that point. Now, I know both Kenni and Diane have lived much, if not all of their lives in this area. So can you talk about some of the changes you've seen on campus? I mean, even the building we're in, Bob Evans Farms Hall, I think is 2001 or 2002. And so you have a lot of longitudinal history. I know as I've read the history of Rio Grande, I think it was Atwood Hall that burned in 1958. It's essentially where Allen Hall, or it was between Allen Hall and the Fine Arts Building. I mean, there were some beautiful old buildings here that aren't here anymore. And what used to be called Rio Grande College, founded in 1876, has been part of the fabric of the institution. But can either both of you talk about what some of your earlier memories are of this college and university, maybe before you came here, or attitudes or friends, or I know your daughter, Jessie, has a computer science degree from us, so some other things, so that tell part of the Rio Grande story.
When I first came as a student, community hall was still there, where Fine Arts Building is now, and that was really was that here when you were?
No, I
here?
came after
No?
that, yeah.
Oh,
The
so I'm
student center
really
was
old.
right next
But
to it.
anyway,
The student center was right next to
the
Allen Hall.
Student center was old student center, and
The Rhodes Building wasn't built yet, I don't think.
Okay.
you could drive down through the by the library and the student center, and there's parking places
Oh,
down
really?
through
Right
there.
there.
I always got parking tickets there.
Oh,
I didn't know you could park there.
yeah. Well, I was here before you were.
Well,
remember?
that's true, yeah.
They probably changed it when you came, but
Well, the Line Center was only half the size it is now.
Right. And that's athletics for those of you who don't know in the audience, yeah.
The Davis Career Center opened the first, right out of high school, I was in one of the first classes that summer it opened.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's been there that long. We won't tell you how long that's been.
Okay.
No.
And what did you study here when you were a student?
Accounting.
Okay, okay. Well, then that's a natural connection with the business office, which is where you started.
That's
so
where I
sure.
started, yeah.
Right, right. Okay, great. Again, we're not going to mention individuals here, but Kenni, as she's mentioned, has a lot to do with all the areas of arts and sciences, and Diane, more specifically, with math and science. So this is a general comment. I just want everybody to know this is not individual specific. But having been a dean or provost for over a quarter of a century, when I interact with other deans and provosts, I would say that there's some stereotyping that goes on. For example, fine arts faculty are always very temperamental. And pianists especially would come into my office and say, sorry, I'm losing my thing here. Pianists would come into my office and say, the relative humidity's gone down from 47 to 39%. You have to get all the pianos tuned again because they're all out of tune, and they sound fine to me. On the other hand, I love that kind of temperamentality because they are trying to do the best they can playing the piano, and I love that attention to detail. But, so that's one stereotype. Another stereotype is that English professors don't know how to do math, and English professors are reciting poetry as they drive into a ditch or something. We're very absent-minded. And I think both those things are really unfair because as an English professor, I've always done statistics in my head because I played football and basketball and baseball. And I played basketball through Division III basketball in college. And I always sat at the end of the bench. I was good enough to make the team, but not good enough to play very much. And I remember going in at times scoring 4 points and getting 2 rebounds. And as I went back to the bench and realized I wouldn't play again with my 4 points and 2 rebounds, I'd think, okay, I'm averaging 3.3 rebounds and 3.3 points and 1.6 rebounds. And I would do the math in my head just to keep from being bored on the bench. And I'd realize, okay, I'm up to 3.4 points a game and up to 1.9 rebounds a game or whatever. So whenever I've had grants and had to figure out what a 5% drawdown is or 11.1% of the salaries, people have always been surprised. They always go, "You're an English professor." I'm taking out my calculator and you're doing that in your head. So before I hear any comments from Kenni and Diane, I will say that some of these stereotypes you hear really are not true. But having said that, and realizing that several months from now I'll probably have only 88 views on this and probably none will be professors at Rio, do you see tendencies of behavior among faculty in certain areas?
Yes.
Okay. And are you
So
willing
you're
to share
sad.
any of those with
Well,
us?
sure. Having worked in Wood Hall and Allen Hall and on the administrative side, and in Wood Hall and Bob Evans on the academic side, the the faculty in Wood Hall are more creative, I guess, because they're doing the gen eds. They're not in a specific program, whereas the faculty down in Bob Evans are business, the School of Business. They're very detailed, very straight with what they're doing.
Right, and Woodhull would be English, history, sociology, psychology. Am I forgetting anything else? Those are the major areas, though. So.
Communications, yeah.
Oh, of course, the TV
Communication.
studio that we're in. Okay, communication. Of course, it's communication. Okay. Okay. Well, good. Diane, do you want to get in trouble by answering that question? Or?
My people are very unique.
Okay, the science and
Let's
math
just
people.
put it that way.
Okay.
They're very they're also they're very particular and make sure everything is in line for math and chemistry and physics and biology and their labs and everything. So they're different than this building, but they're sort of like the same as a business.
Right. Yeah, and again, attention to detail is important in every area, but especially, if you're doing a science lab, the beaker's got to be clean in order for, and if it's got residue from the last experiment, you're not going to get the right results. So that's certainly true.
Or maybe blow something up.
Yeah. Well, what this discussion is reminding me of are what we would consider classical notions from ancient Greece and Rome. And there's a concept called tragic flaw, meaning that your best characteristics are also your deepest flaw. Like Oedipus, who was very good about figuring out problems, but a major problem that he never understood. He was given the Delphic oracle said when he was very young, you're going to kill your father and marry your mother. And so what his parents did was they took him and they essentially adopted him out. And then 20 years later, he was on a road and he refused to back off. And the other guy refused to back off and he ended up killing him, and that was his father without knowing it. And then he goes on to the city, and the queen there is now a widow. And although my students are, when I've taught this, they're like, oh, that's so sick. I go, no, you don't understand. Like, Jocasta was a really attractive MILF. She was like, a mid-40s Sandra Bullock or something. And he's like a handsome 20-year-old. And they get married. So they were trying to avoid it. And he had so much wisdom, he could figure out the riddle of the Sphinx. But that same wisdom of trying to avoid it made him guilty of that. And I think you might have to bleep out major parts of what I've just said. But if we go forward with this, the point I'm trying to make is that a lot of the passion that professors have, we make fun of them, and I make fun of myself frequently for some of those passions, but the passions are what make them good. When I have a professor come into my office and say, students have to take this 19th century European history war because European history wars history class, because if you don't understand the Franco-Prussian War, you have no concept of modern life. And I think most people would say, well, that's pretty extreme, but I still love that sense of passion that they have. Of course, you have to learn my discipline, because that's what makes you an educated person. And I think what we're dealing with, too, is what defines an educated person changes over time. I've frequently told a story. My mother was in a fourth-year German class at University of Michigan in 1948, and it's fourth-year German, so they're talking totally in German. And she's asked a question by her German professor that is in a language she recognizes as probably being French. And so she responded, and if she were still alive, she could tell me exactly what she said, but I know it started with, Herr Doktor Professor, and she said, I don't understand the French language. And his response in German to her was, and this is 1948, spring of 1948 in Ann Arbor, he said, Miss Berman, her maiden name, consider yourself uneducated until you know the French language. Which was interesting because all three of her sons then became fluent in French. but she never learned it to the 84th year of her life when she passed away. So isn't that an interesting point that in 1948 you'd have a professor say, if you don't know French, you're not educated. I don't think anybody would say that now about French in the United States. Maybe Spanish, maybe a computer language, but certainly not. So part of my point here is that what we consider to be an educated person changes over time. So having set up that context, what differences have you seen in the professors over time in the years that you've been here in terms of perspective, maybe even being honest in terms of how much time they spend on campus? I mean, we're all on campus 40 hours a week or more, and I know it's frequently a frustration that with block scheduling, yeah, we've got some big labs on Friday, and we have nursing faculty who are 30 miles away doing clinicals. But, you know, are there differences? Because I hear about, from people like Ray Maturo in the 70s, you know, every faculty member would be here on a Friday. And we all know that on a Friday here, the parking lot's half empty. So a lot of the residential students have left. A lot of the commuting students don't come. So was it different 20 or 30 years ago? Were there more people on campus on Fridays and in the evenings for events? I've also heard stories. I mean, I can show up at a basketball game halfway, you know, a couple minutes into the game and get a seat. And I know Stephanie Saunders always tells me she's been coming to games since she was a kid. She's a professor here, and she said you had to be there at the start if you wanted a seat. I mean, is that true?
Yeah. Especially big rivals like Shawnee.
Shawnee State,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Well, there wasn't a lot of transportation for students at that time,
Oh,
so they
interesting
did stay,
point.
and they
Yeah.
would stay for the weekends, and
Right.
and the professors were here, but we were on a quarter system, so we were here 5 days a week, and
And they
it made
didn't
a
have
difference. in
Internet
some-
classes. They didn't
No
have all the
internet.
technology,
Yeah.
the distractions that they
Yeah.
have.
Nothing
That's
like
an
that.
interesting point, and I'd like to pick up on that. I was watching a women's basketball game a couple weeks ago with Bob Willey, who is the track and field coach here, and he got his degrees in the 70s, and he's been here, I think, nonstop since then. And he says it's the internet and it is the iPhone, because I'm saying, why aren't there more students here? You know, Coach Smalley's winning his 500th game tonight. The place should be packed. And Coach Willey said they're in their rooms. They're watching Netflix or
probably.
whatever else.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how the internet connects us with the world. At the same time, it kind of isolates us too.
Yes.
And I know it's easy because I have Netflix too. And you know, I'll find a series and I'll just decide on a Thursday night I'm going to watch till 1 in the morning, and I'm not interacting with anyone. So I guess that's part of it. But ideally, the internet can also create community so that you realize, you know, there are collie lovers across the country, and you know, you can get on some of these chat rooms and things like that. Well, that's an interesting point. Of other comments about changes you've seen over time, you mentioned about parking on campus, and that is one thing they've done, that our parking lots essentially surround the campus, and especially President Johnston, even though when she came here, people were driving up and down the sidewalks. She's taken a hard line on that. You do not
So
drive on
right.
the sidewalks. You know, you park outside and really make it a walking campus. So I think that's a very positive change. Anything else?
Nothing we want to admit to.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Yeah. They say more to the audience, but then they'd have to kill all of you. And we certainly don't want to do that. We're down to our last minute or two, and I know a lot of people who watch this show never come to this area. I think my recommendation would be, when you come here, of course, come to our campus in Rio Grande, come to our off-site centers in Pomeroy and Jackson and MacArthur. But one of the things I love living in downtown Gallipolis is just sitting in the beautiful 200-year-old park and watching freighters and sailboats and other things go up and down the river. I love Courtside downtown. Ginther's, the meat market, is one of the best meat markets I've ever been to. Buy their pork roast and cook it slowly, and it's fall off the bone. It's wonderful. So last minute or so before we go off, anything that's great about this area that people shouldn't miss?
They need to go to Buffalo Wild Wings.
Buffalo Wild Wings. Oh, and whose son is manager at Buffalo Wild
General
Wings?
manager, my son Stephen Neff.
Okay, okay.
That's Stevie.
Stevie, that's Stevie, yes.
Oh, that's the Stevie. Okay, okay. And it's a beautiful Buffalo Wild Wings. The parking lot's always full.
It's
And
nice.
do love those
Clean.
wings. Yeah, and it
Yeah.
actually has a Bevo Francis jersey framed on the wall,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Bevo Francis, of course, scored 112 points or so in 1953. Down to a half minute. Anything else
ahead.
about the area?
Twinkleberries.
Twinkleberries.
Twinkleberries, yes. We have a relatively new bake shop that's open from 6 a.m. 6 mornings a week, and it's right at the edge of campus. So, well, thank you very much. Thank you to Diane and Kenny. They do a great job in my office and in other offices on campus. Thank you very much. And thank you to the studio as well. And have a good month. See you next month.